And I think in 2025, we all need to stop feeding the beast. All right, welcome back to Please Read Your Book. My name's Carl. I'm going to talk about some books and some bookish things. So this is the first video of 2025 that I'm making. If you're watching this around New Year's, Happy New Year's to you. Super cold here in Shanghai. And last week was Christmas. Had a few days off, so I actually got a lot of reading in, and I watched a lot of BookTube, which is what I'm going to also talk about here. And I do have some notes here, so apologies. I will occasionally be looking at my notes. But the books, some of the books I read, I've got here. First book I read, well, I read 2 novellas and a novel. But first one, let's see if we can get that. Focus, maybe, I don't know. At Night, All Blood is Black by David Diop. This is a pretty short novel, or novella almost. 140 pages, something like that. So this is pretty interesting. It's set in World War I, and it follows a Senegalese soldier and his partner, basically, or his brother in arms, or whatever you want to call it. And they're fighting for the French during World War I. And at the very beginning of the book, one of the 2 dies, a pretty horrible death, as a lot of soldiers did, as so many soldiers did during World War I. And the guy who survives is haunted and obsessed with his friend's death. And you learn that they grew up together in the same village, and they knew each other really well. And they were sort of kind of taking care of each other during the war. And of course, you know, he's really like upset, and he's very obsessed with how his friend died, and he's kind of keeps ruminating and has a lot of like flashbacks of how he died, of the attack that he died in, and a lot of the gory details of that. One of the things that happens is he goes out into the battlefield, collects his body, and brings it back to the trench where he and his platoon or his battalion are stationed and kind of working from. Overall, I liked it, but I didn't really like the prose. It's very lyrical and very poetic. And I just personally, this is totally personal, totally subjective. I just don't really care for that style of prose, particularly with this kind of book where it's a war book, it's a war novel. I just don't think that the people fighting in those wars and in those events would necessarily think and speak in such a poetic and lyrical way. That's not to say it's bad writing. Like I said, it's just a personal taste and a personal choice of mine. The prose too is it's very repetitive. There's a lot of phrases that are repeated and scenes that are ruminated over and over again in the narrator's mind. Use a lot of the same phrasing and the same words and the same language. So it gets this very almost kind of hypnotic and repetitive feeling to it, which has a certain kind of effect. I just didn't really care for the way that it was executed on a prose level. But not a bad book, definitely a good book, and it won the 2021 International Booker Prize. So obviously somebody else thought it was pretty good. So there's that. The second book is another novella. This is The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. Very short book. I got this in hardcover, which is really beautiful, by the way. I should have maybe photographed this or shot it a little differently, but there's some really nice artwork on the inside of one of our characters who's a plague doctor. So this is a story of a plague doctor and a mermaid, or a mermaid-like creature, who are trying to sort of journey out of a decaying world, or part of a decaying world that they find themselves in. I was really surprised by this novel. I thought it would be more of a straight-up horror story, but it's really just more like dark fantasy. I mean, there are definitely horrific elements to it, but it's really more dark fantasy in that there's a very rich and a very detailed world that the characters live in, and that is a huge part of the story. As they are journeying along, they come across some boys who are fighting, and one of them is killed, and they're sort of like shocked and horrified by it, and the boys are saying, oh, it's okay, he'll live again, he'll be revived, basically. And they take everyone back to I guess the camp where they're living, or the village where they're living, and show the Plague Doctor and the mermaid this sort of like black magic that kind of gives them eternal life. But then they start to question, like, at what price? And they're not happy about that. And they decide to take those matters into their own hands. So similar to a lot of fantasy and dark fantasy, it is more about agency and autonomy and free will than anything else. So it's very good. It's very interesting. This also has a very poetic style of prose to it, and very lyrical style of prose. And I felt like it really worked quite well in this story. And I think that generally fantasy, that's a style of prose that can work well in executing a fantasy story. So very, very good. I really enjoyed it. I need to find more of her writing. It's very interesting work. So there was that. And the next one was Count Zero by William Gibson. So Count Zero is book number 2 in the Sprawl trilogy, which is the first 3 published novels that William Gibson put out. The first one is his most famous, which is, of course, Neuromancer. This is book 2 in that trilogy, but it's definitely not a sequel. Or it's another story set in that world, I should say. There are very similar settings, characters, elements. Some of the background characters, I think, were also in Neuromancer. I'd have to double check, but if not, they were very familiar, and they definitely belong in this world. I thought that this was a stronger book than Neuromancer, in that the story is tighter and more compact and easier to follow. Neuromancer is a really almost very complicated kind of story, and it just goes to lots of places, which is kind of cool and part of the appeal of the story of Neuromancer, but I think it also detracts from the book, whereas this is quite tight. It's a pretty linear story, I should say, or at least as linear as you can get in this kind of cyberpunk world. Basically, it's about a young man who wants to become a famous hacker. His hacking name is Count Zero, or Count Zero Interrupt. That's his name in The Matrix, which is what William Gibson called what basically became the internet, or the World Wide Web, before it was well known as that. And he gets hired to try to sort of take down I can't remember if he's a CEO or CTO or an engineer, but somebody who has developed a new kind of chip and processing chip which could revolutionize AI, which is something that is prevalent in the book, but it's still not well understood. And it's, of course, because it's a cyberpunk book, all the major technology and AIs and things like that are owned and operated and controlled by major corporations, but some of the AIs are starting to split off and become sentient. That was a bit of a sidetrack, but that's something you need to know, because that's basically what Neuromancer is about. And so that's an event in this world that has shaped this story. Anyways, he gets hired by some other corporations and some other hackers to try to take down this guy, because they don't like what his chip could bring. They don't like the changes that his new chip could bring about. But of course, like Neuromancer, it's not only a cyberpunk story, but it's a bit of a noir story, in the sense that the main characters undertake a mission, so to speak, but it turns into something else, and there's much larger elements at play that they weren't fully aware of that end up taking over and sort of taking precedence in the story, and they have to make some choices and some decisions to take action over that. So Excellent book. If you like Neuromancer, I think you're really going to like this one. Overall, I think it's a bit stronger than Neuromancer. So that was that. And then I don't have hard copies of it. I read them on my iPad. I read 2 more volumes of Berserk, which is a massive manga. I think they're up to volume 41. I read volumes 25 and 26, and I hadn't read Berserk for quite a while. It's been a few months since I've read it, but I was able to sort of dive back in. It's pretty easy manga to pick up. The cast of characters and settings and things like that are rather small for manga and also for a dark fantasy manga, or in this case, grimdark. This is definitely grimdark fantasy. I don't know how to explain what is going on in Berserk right now. Like I said, this is volume 26. I think I need to make separate videos about Berserk. But what I would like to say is that Berserk is this huge, massive story. I mean, it's 41 volumes. I don't know how many different story arcs there are. A story arc can span multiple volumes, and each volume is about, what, 240 pages or something like that? So it's a huge story. It's a lot of story. And I often think of it as like you're kind of traveling on this spiral with a central spike in the middle around the spiral. And the central spike is the main part of the narrative, but then the story and these arcs kind of spin around and we get different glimpses of what's actually happening. And I think in volume, if you've read it, volume 25, 26, there's a major event that happens. The main character, Guts, acquires some new armor, which also changes him. Yeah, that didn't make any sense if you don't know about Berserk. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that because it's a dark fantasy story. The main character, Guts, is on a mission to kill demons which keep appearing on Earth. It's set in a fictional Europe in the Middle Ages. There is not a lot of magic, but there are sort of supernatural forces and supernatural powers. He is a human who has definitely somehow been imbued with supernatural power to kill these demons. He's also been branded by the demons so they can find him when they sense that he's near because he's got this brand on his neck. It's a lot better than it sounds, trust me. So if you're into things like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, definitely need to check it out. It's really, really cool. It's very accessible, super easy to read. You can pick up different volumes here and there and read them. So anyways, enough about that. I think talking about manga and that's a whole different thing. So last week I read what for me was a lot. 2 novellas, a science fiction novel, a couple of volumes of manga, and I watched a lot of BookTube. And what really struck me is that what for me would be a lot of reading, which I did last week, would be a light week for so many people on BookTube. And I find people that are reading, like 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10 books a week. And I just really wonder, are there that many people that are that gifted at reading? I know some people genuinely are, and some people in their channels will from time to time comment that their reading habits are not normal and that they are voracious readers or they read very fast or, they're gifted readers, things like that. I love reading. I read every day, and on the weekend I read more than I would during the normal week, but I still struggle to get through a novel a week, a novel being 350 pages maybe. I think once you get to the 500 page mark, those are big books. And I'm always just struck by how many people can just read seemingly thousands of pages a week. How do people do this? Do they have a job? I have a job. I'm a teacher. I work from 8 a.m. to 4, which means I'm up at 6, coffee, shower, walk to work, I work until 4, which means I'm home by 4:30 or 5. So basically from 6 to 5, I'm working. From 5 to 10, I go to sleep at 10 because I like to get 8 hours of sleep. I'm a human. But, you know, like in those evening hours, like I don't watch TV much anymore. Once or twice a week, I'll watch a movie, usually on the weekend. I exercise. I obviously need to exercise more, you can tell. But, you know, I cook dinner, I do my laundry, I talk to my friends, I do stuff online. My point is like, I don't have a really active social life. I'm a bit older. I live in a very quiet suburban area. So I just don't have a really active social life. So I feel like I have a lot of time for reading and for my hobbies, but I still can't read as much as some of these people read. And I can't make as many videos. This is another thing that has really struck me is people who are making like 3, 4 videos a week, and each video is like 20 or 30 minutes long. And the videos range from, you know, rundown, like updates on what they're reading, books that they've bought, maybe a more in-depth review of a book, and then maybe even like a discussion with another person, you know. And I just wonder, like, how do people have this much time? So there's that. But the other thing that really struck me, I mean, it's great if someone's got this much time. Maybe you are retired or you've got a 4-hour work week or something going on, which, by the way, if you know how to do that and it actually works, please share that with the rest of us. But if you have this much time, I also really wonder, like, why are you making so much content? And this is the word I want to talk about, is content. Like, I watched a lot of this stuff, more than I should have, and I realized that this is just content. A lot of it is just content, meaning it lacks, it kind of lacks depth. You know, it's a lot, oftentimes just this kind of machine gunning out of book titles and 30 seconds to 2 minutes about what a book is about, and not much like discussion, like not talking about prose or themes in the book or anything like that. Or if there are, it's always very like surface kind of stuff. And it just, so that's what's really making me question, like, how are people actually reading? Are they reading with any kind of depth? Are they reading with any kind of intention? I mean, sometimes it's okay. I mean, like, I was sick last week and I just read to kind of distract myself. And, you know, like that, the manga stuff, like, it's not, I mean, you could sit down and really analyze that and pick it apart. You really could. There's a lot going on in there. But I don't, you know. Part of it is because I'm still relatively new to manga, and I'm still kind of trying to figure out my way around it. So my point there was, like, I watched a lot of this content and a lot of it really lacks a lot of depth, and it's just content. And I'm thinking of content as kind of digital Doritos. Doritos are not actually food. They are a food-like item. Doritos are not made to nourish you. In fact, they do the opposite. They don't nourish you. They're terrible for you. They're bad for you. They make you fat. They give you all sorts of other kind of digestive health problems. And they're addictive too. They're like chemically engineered so that you like them, so that somehow they stimulate your taste buds and your mind in a way that you want to continue eating them. And I feel like a lot of the content that people are putting out, specifically to BookTube, is just that. It's just kind of digital Doritos. It lacks any kind of like depth or, you know, intellectual kind of nourishment or stimulation, you know. I mean, some of it is just entertaining, and this is just my personal subjective thing. I'm just really tired of the people who are just on there to just make really fast-paced videos with tons of cuts and zooms and this, that, and the other, and it's just like, you realize, like, this is just a digital Dorito. It's not actually engaging or stimulating in any kind of way. And I feel like I'm starting to wonder, like, do people make this stuff just for the sake of making it and just kind of feeding the beast? And that's kind of my point here, is like, are we actually reading and discussing books that we really love and putting stuff out there so that We can document our love for it, we can share our love for it, and maybe have some discussion with someone else about it. Or are we just feeding the beast? Are we just feeding the algorithm? You know, it's no different than a bot that just creates tweets or X posts or whatever we call it now. You know, it doesn't, it's not real. It lacks any kind of real depth, any kind of real engagement. I mean, it can get views and likes and things like that, but I just wonder, like, why, how is that helpful? Like, what are you really doing with all that? What is the actual point of it all? And the funny thing is too, is like, from time to time, these people on these channels will make a video to say, like, they can't keep up with it, they can't keep doing it, you know, it's like they're burned out. And I just feel like reading is something you should not burn out on. You shouldn't burn out on reading. And you shouldn't burn out on discussing reading. You should never burn out on discussing things you'd like. You'll burn out on it if you're just generating content for the sake of generating content to try to capture likes and subscribers, you know? And I'm guilty of wanting more subscribers, of course, but that's because I actually want to discuss books with people, you know? And I'm really happy that of my time on BookTube, I think I've made a couple of quite decent friends based solely on a discussion of a book that they had or that I had. So, and that's cool. And I just wonder, like, are people doing it for that, or are people just feeding the beast, feeding the YouTube beast and feeding the algorithm? You see that a lot too with these like book haul videos. I myself am clearly guilty of buying a lot of books. I mean, if you've watched my videos over time, you've seen this shelf fill up pretty quickly, and I've got this pile here, which I'm embarrassed to say I don't have room on the shelf for. So, but that's because you can't see it, but down below there's boxes and stuff like that. My point here is, like, the other aspect of this is that people kind of feel, I can tell people feel compelled to buy books and then make the haul video. I've made haul videos too. I haven't made many, and after I've made them, I just felt like, why did I make that video? I made that video because I felt like I needed to make a video. I felt like I didn't have anything else to talk about, so I just talked about the books I bought, which is really crap. That's just like crap content. Like, I wouldn't make a sweatshirt haul. Oh, I bought a sweatshirt. Let me make a video about it. I would feel like a horrible like consumerist if I did that. So why would I do that with books? I have done it, and I'm not going to do it anymore. I think it's terrible. I think it's stupid content, you know? And I think that also leads people into feeding another beast, which is Amazon. And I'm going to make another video about feeding the Amazon beast relatively soon too here. So, okay, so here's the point I've been trying to get at here, is that we don't need any more digital Doritos. We don't need any more content, and we don't need content creators. We have AI that makes content. And everybody knows, like, when you read these AI essays or you see these AI videos, they're crap. And I don't just mean like the AI generated image videos. I mean like the ones where people get AI to write a script, they find another AI to read the script, and then they just pack it with stock images or whatever other images they can steal and download from other things. It's just garbage content. It's just crap content. And people just do it to farm likes, to farm subscribes, and try to farm AdSense clicks. We don't need that. We don't need that at all. We've never needed it. So don't do it. Don't be one of those BookTube people that does that kind of garbage. Be one of those BookTubers that actually reads a book and actually likes the book and has real opinions to share about the book. And think a little bit too about your opinion before you share it. Like, if you like a book, don't just say, oh, it was great, it was fun, and it was exciting. Tell me what was great about it. Tell me what was fun and exciting about it. If you didn't like something, tell me why. Like, did you just not like the prose? Did you feel the story arc was just too sloppy? Were there too many threads that didn't get, resolved, or things like that? And I'd also like to see people too, like, trying to read differently and trying to read more widely and read more diversely. It's so easy to just like say that you're reading all these fantasy novels. We'll just use that, or horror novels, because you can get, or sci-fi, like especially those three genres, you can get lots of likes and subscribes by doing that. You know, my best videos are purely genre related, and my channel sucks. I have I have hardly any subscribers or followers, but I think we'd be better off if we showed that we do read widely, that we do read broadly. You don't have to just focus on a niche, you know. And if you do want to focus on a niche, go deep, become an expert, become that person, that go-to person for that genre. Meaning, like, understand it and really go deep and really pick it apart and really analyze it and tell us what makes it so great, what makes it worth going deep with. So there you go. A few thoughts. I guess I just want to ask people, are you actually really talking about books because you love them, or are you just trying to feed the beast? Something to think about. And I think in 2025, we all need to stop feeding the beast. So there you go. A bit of a deep thought from Jack Handy here at Please Read Your Book. And I hope to see you again soon.